Preble County has a number of reportedly haunted hotspots, including Brubaker Bridge. Brubaker Bridge was built in 1887 over a creek. The bridge became rather infamous after a tragic accident in the 30s. A group of young folks coming back from a party crashed their car inside the covered bridge. The impact was so severe that their bodies were flung from the vehicle in pieces. One young man was initially thought missing entirely, but was later found to have been ejected so far from the car that it landed in the brush, and his body was completely overlooked and was eventually lost to the elements. Since then, people crossing the bridge have reported strange occurrences like car engines mysteriously dying and a tapping sound on car windows, which some believe is the young man still trying to be found.
Next on our list is the Mansfield Reformatory, also known as the Ohio State Reformatory, and the inspiration behind Shawshank Redemption. It was also temporarily home to country music singer David Allen Cole, Confederate Army General John Hunt Morgan, mobster George Bugs Moran, and gangster aides Charlie Mackley and Harry Piper Point. During the prison's years of operation, over 200 people died on the grounds, including guards who were killed during a prison escape. Illnesses ran rampant throughout the institute. Riots often broke out, and one inmate even set themselves on fire. At one point, 120 inmates were jammed into 12 solitary confinement cells and kept without food and water for days, which caused many prisoners to go mad, kill and kill one another. And of course, as it so often goes, many of those who died in the prison are believed to have never left. Visitors to the former penitentiary have reported being pushed and even punched by unseen forces. These ghosts are mad. People have also felt inexplicable chills and have heard cell doors slam, and have also seen dark apparitions wandering around the halls. If you like haunted places, this might be a great place to go, but maybe wear some protective padding.
Buckeye Jake's Eatery and Bar sounds like a place with some good grub. It must be good though, because the place is still open despite the fact that some staff have run screaming out of the place, never to return. To say it's haunted would be an understatement. What doesn't go on at this place? People will report items flying off the shelves, black shadowy figures roaming through the halls after the place has been closed up for the night, doors opening by themselves, chairs and tables have fallen over seemingly on their own. The sound system will often switch channels out of nowhere. There's even the spectral figure of a woman in a white gown who's known to staff as Helen.
Well, considering the fact that the chairs are moving, we know that James will not be going there. If you guys have been with this channel for a while, you probably know James has a completely rational fear of chairs. Next up, the Ridges, aka Athens Lunatic Asylum. I'm sorry for roasting you so badly. Alright you guys, the asylum was built in Athens, Ohio in 1868, and the first patient to be admitted was a young woman suffering from epilepsy. However, her parents believed that she was possessed by a demon. Of course, it was the 1800s. The institution went on to house men and women with a variety of mental illnesses, as well as war veterans, rule breakers, the homeless, the elderly, and even the criminally insane. I guess it was a kind of hospital slash prison slash municipal lawsuit waiting to happen. Treatments at the hospital often included lobotomies, which either led to death or patients ending up with seizures, hemorrhages, and internal bleeding, causing them to live out the rest of their days as a shell of their former selves. During the hospital's years of operation, 700 women and 959 men died while receiving treatment in the dangerously overcrowded and asbestos-infested facility. One of the most famous deaths that took place on the grounds was that of a 50-year-old female patient who had gone missing for 6 weeks, only to be found in an unused room of the asylum. She had taken off her clothes, folded them neatly, and then laid down on the floor to die. It's unclear whether or not foul play was involved, although it does seem kind of strange. Her body left a stain on the floor that is still visible after all of these years, and it is said that that woman, along with many other patients who died on the grounds, continue to roam and haunt the property to this day.
Here's something you don't hear about every day: a haunted mall. only in Ohio, right? Sandusky Mall in Erie County has its Eerie County, perfect name. It has its fair share of ghostly urban legends and ghost stories. One story goes that a police officer noticed a mysterious red light at the mall's main entrance one night around 1:30 a.m. while he finished up some paperwork in his squad car, and as he approached the light, it just vanished. He thought it could have been mall security, but it turned out they were all the way on the other side of the building. An employee at Kaufman's department store reported feeling an unexpected cold presence and actually fell over when she turned around to see what it was. She got this gust of cold air and nobody was actually there. Even the American Eagle at this mall is haunted. Like, how many places in the world are you gonna find a haunted American Eagle? One of the most frequently reported ghostly sightings at the mall is the woman in the red dress. Two of the most well-known accounts are from an overnight security guard and a visitor of the mall. The overnight guard had been on patrol when he mistook her for a real person and called the police before this woman in the dress just vanished into thin air. There have also been reports of a headless hitchhiker and a driverless car seen outside the mall. Never have I wanted to go to a mall so badly.
Next on our list today we have Franklin Castle, located in Cleveland, Ohio. The castle was originally inhabited by the Tideman family. Prior to building Franklin Castle, Haynes Tideman and his wife lived in a different house on the same property, but tragedy struck and one by one the couple watched as almost all of their sons and daughters died. After the tragic losses, the Tidemans decided to tear down their previous home and build the Franklin Castle in its place. But it seems that whatever was haunting the family was unfazed by the change of scenery. Mrs. Tideman died in 1890, and after that the Tideman's remaining sons and daughters lost their lives as well. After Haynes Tideman passed, it is rumored that the castle's many hidden passages became a meeting place for local members of a foreign hate group. Not only that, but apparently during one of those meetings a killing spree broke out. The house, which some believe to be the most haunted house in all of Ohio, is now open to the public, and visitors to the castle who have slept in the rooms of the deceased report having felt the presence of the dead, as well as having heard strange noises throughout the home. If you do decide to visit, I think it's like a one-night stay. It's pretty creepy. If you have visited, let me know all about it.
Next up we have Fudge Road in Gratis. How could a place named Fudge Road possibly be evil? Well, it turns out the place is just teeming with ghoulies. You got the spirits of two men who died on the road during an illicit substance bust. There have also been sightings of a white humanoid beast reported in the area. The bridge on Fudge Road, known locally as Crybaby Bridge, has multiple ghosts. Legend has it that a mother in the 1800s threw her son off the bridge, and his spirit is still said to haunt the area, along with the spirit of a woman who hanged herself from the bridge after losing her infant. It's said that if you park your car there, you shut it off, roll down the window, and say "Mama" 3 times, you might hear the ghostly cries of one of those little ghosts. And finally, you have the story of a truck driver who died after driving off the bridge, and he haunted the place, of course, because no one in Ohio just dies and stays dead, apparently.
Next up, we've got Helltown, located in the Boston township of Summit County in Ohio. Not only is it a ghost town, but it's a ghost town. Ghosts Town. It was founded in 1806, but in 1974, President Ford ordered the town to be vacated so that the area could be used as a national park. Or so he said. People were forced out of their homes until the entire township was abandoned. Originally, the homes were supposed to be demolished and removed, and the land brought back to its natural state, but neither of those things ever happened. Instead, the town sat abandoned and destitute, begging the question of why its residents were forcibly removed in the first place. Many believe that there was a chemical spill in the area and that the government's removal of the town's residents was actually a cover-up, but of course there's no way to be sure. What we do know is that after the townspeople left, the area became the perfect setting for satanic worship. The grounds are now said to be cursed by the devil, thus earning itself the very fitting nickname, Helltown.
Hereford Station in New London is said to be haunted by a woman named Augusta Bowman. In the mid-1890s, Hereford Station was a busy hub on the B&O Railroad. It's now abandoned, but it's still home to some creepy spectral figures, or really one. The station, alongside a hotel and restaurant, sat in a valley just south of New London on Route 60. Augusta Bowman, a single mother of two who worked in the local restaurant, became romantically entangled. She had an entanglement with the married restaurant owner, but when he discovered that she planned to leave him for another man, he got jealous. Hypocritical much? He killed Bowman and disposed of her body in a nearby creek. Well, guess who haunts the area now? Railroad workers have been known to report seeing a distressed young woman wandering near the edge of the woods along the tracks, who of course vanishes into thin air. Oh, and here's a really creepy thing though that's been said to happen. Locals will see a white-faced woman just peering into their windows at night. And I imagine they go outside and she's not there anymore.
And finally, we have the Lima Tuberculosis Hospital, a sanitarium whose doors originally opened in 1911 during the rise of the tuberculosis epidemic. At first, the hospital was equipped with only 24 beds, but in 1927, due to a rise in the number of infected individuals, the hospital was remodeled to hold 158 beds. The sanitarium was in operation for 62 years, during which time an estimated 3,000 patients died from their illnesses under the hospital's care, which is wild considering that it didn't house a lot of people. Now, the grounds are said to be extremely haunted, of course, by deceased patients. People have claimed to have had ghosts following them through the halls of the abandoned building, and on the third floor, explorers have reported hearing a very low, steady pounding noise, as well as having seen shadowy figures quickly moving around the halls and in and out of rooms. Today, the area is pretty heavily guarded by police, as it is not only abandoned but also banned for the safety of the public. So if you are hoping to go ghost hunting in Ohio, you might have to leave this one off your list, unfortunately, despite the fact that it would probably be a pretty cool place to visit. But I'm not condoning that. That's liability is not mine. No, don't go.
Melon heads. It's said if you drive through Lake County, Ohio late at night and happen to see something that resembles a pack of people with huge heads staring at you from the tall grass, you may have stumbled across the melon heads of Ohio. Allegedly, the government ran a number of experiments which eventually left a group of humans with heads swelled to enormous sizes. Now obviously, the government found little to do with these now deformed people, so the story goes that they got dumped off in the woods near Kirtland, Ohio, not far from Cleveland. But because every story gets retold, more paranormal theories have been proposed about the melon heads. Some believe them to be the ghosts of young subjects who burned to death in a cabin fire. Now it's said that they were subjected to tests by a man named Dr. Crow, whose work caused their heads to inflate to their larger size. Now regardless of their origins, the melon heads get sighted most at Windsor Road, where many high schoolers go and attempt to witness them firsthand. Now to me, that sounds absolutely terrifying, and if I ever go to Ohio, I will be avoiding that area completely. Number 9. Helltown. With a name like Helltown, it's no shock that this town had terrible things happen. Founded in 1806, Boston Village's original claim to fame was its standing as the oldest village in Summit County. But in 1974, it became the unlucky victim of nationwide anxiety over the county's disappearing forest land. The land was then given to the National Park Services, and they decided it'd be home to a new park. The government began buying the properties of its longtime residents, and then, of course, the government quickly fell behind on its plan to create the park, and the village sat neglected. Now the hellish aura of the area only continued to grow when they also acquired the Craigie dump in 1985. Rangers visiting the site became ill and covered in rashes. It was soon discovered that the dump was highly polluted with toxic chemicals improperly disposed of. Also in the village there is a church, which is said to have been built by Satanists, complete with upside down crosses. There's an abandoned bus that is said to be the host of lingering ghosts, and there is a talk talk of mutants who were created by the chemical spill, including the monstrous snake known as the Peninsula python. Number 8. The Butcher of Kingsbury Run. The Butcher of Kingsbury Run was an identified serial slayer who was active in Cleveland, Ohio in the 1930s. The deaths are characterized by the dismemberment of 13 known victims and the disposal of their remains in the impoverished neighborhood of Kingsbury Run. Now, most victims came from an area east of Kingsbury Run called the Roaring Third or Hobo Jungle, known for its bars, gambling, dens, brothels, and vagrants. Now, many of the victims remain unidentified to this day, and despite an investigation of the deaths, which at one time was led by famed lawman Elliot Ness, then Cleveland's public safety director, the criminal responsible was never apprehended. Now, recent speculation suggests that the butcher may have traveled west and was also responsible for the death of Elizabeth Short of the Black Dahlia murder case. Number 7. The Circleville Letter Writer. In the 1970s, residents of a small town of Circleville and Pickaway County started receiving personal, mysterious letters about their lives. Now, the letters were written in block style and contained vindictive, violent, and often vulgar material. School bus driver Mary Glipsy became the main target of the letters. The writer accused Mary, who was married, to having an affair with a married school superintendent, Gordon Massey. Now, the letters sent to Mary didn't stop, and they became increasingly threatening. Her husband, Ronald Glipsy, began receiving them too. Then in August 1977, Ronald died, and it was unknown whether the death was accidental or a homicide, but it was believed the letters were related to his death. The letters continued even after a suspect was placed in prison, and the letters continued to arrive in residents' mailboxes, both city officials and average citizens alike, until the late 90s. The writer was never revealed, and it remains an Ohio mystery to this day. Number 6. The Legend of Elizabeth's Grave. This infamous legend starts at Mount Union Pleasant Valley Cemetery, one of the most haunted cemeteries in Ohio. The rural cemetery is home to the chilling Elizabeth's grave. Now, there are two major stories to Elizabeth's legend. In the first, Elizabeth, overcome with grief over the death of her husband, hanged herself from a tree near the rear of the cemetery in which her husband was buried. In another variation, Elizabeth had her life ended in a similar manner by several men angry over her inheritance upon her husband's death. Now, in both legends, the story goes that Elizabeth was buried near the front of the cemetery. However, her tombstone mysteriously moves itself to the back of the cemetery near the location of her death, most often against the very tree from which she hung. When replaced, it would always wander back to the rear of the cemetery. Now, that's not all. It's rumored that Elizabeth still walks the cemetery, often seen in a white dress. A few people claim that apparitions of Elizabeth are accompanied by the apparitions of two shadowy men dressed in all black. Sometimes she's seen hanging from the tree where she lost her life, and some even say that on the anniversary of her death, blood drips from the tree in question. Number 5. Eugene the Mummy. An African-American man in his mid to late 40s was found dead from natural charges on a road near Sabina in Ohio. He was alone and without identification, believed to be a wanderer in search of a job. Townspeople claim to have seen him walking in town the day before, appearing to be ill. The only things in his pocket were $1.40 and a slip of paper with the address 1118 Yale Avenue, Cincinnati. Upon investigation, authorities arrived at the address only to find a vacant lot. The identity of the man was still a complete mystery, so they decided that the name of a nearby neighbor, Eugene, would work for the time being, at least until they figured out who he was. This man, now named Eugene, was brought to Sabina's Littleton funeral home and embalmed. They then set the mummified man in a brick shed near a bus stop so that people could come by and identify the body. Now, the typical 30-day period of viewing passed with no luck, but pretty soon though, Eugene became a permanent resident of Sabina. He just sat there on the side of the road for years. Now, the town loved what they called their town mascot, and Eugene had a couch to rest on, was dusted and cleaned, and his clothes were changed when they got dingy. Over a period of 35 years, it is estimated that Sabina's mummy man was viewed by 1.5 million people, but he's still never been identified. Now, I'm sorry, I can't believe they were able to do that. That is sick. Number 4. Moonville Tunnel. Located deep in the woods, the Moonville Tunnel is framed by faded stone archways covered in moss. Now, the tunnel itself is long and extremely dark, and it's actually an out-of-work stretch of railroad track that leads to an old coal mining town, and of course, It's haunted. Now, the most infamous Moonville ghost story originated in 1880 when engineer Theodore Lawhead was driving a train down the dark, desolate tracks from Cincinnati to Merida when another train unexpectedly collided with his. This was apparently a train dispatcher's mistake, and Theodore and a fireman died instantly. As early as 1895, ghost stories about a figure thought to be Theodore, holding a bright white lantern with a flowing white beard, eyes that glistened like balls of fire, and a halo of twinkling stars, would appear and just as quickly disappear. In addition to the engineer, Moonville is supposedly haunted by a railway brakeman who looms in the tunnel, a woman who smells like lavender, and a bully named Baldy Keaton who has been known to throw rocks and tease people. Number 3. Beaver Creek State Park. This park is special because of its history of being a canal system in the 1800s, with locks that still remain in the park. One of them, called Jake's Lock, is said to be haunted by Jake, a canal worker who was struck by lightning while walking across the top. Many other legends exist within the park, including the tale of Esther Hale, known as the Bride of the Bridge. On the morning of her wedding, someone was sent to check on the groom to find that his house was empty and he was never seen again. Esther, grieving for months wondering what happened to her soon-to-be husband, was then found dead in her home. According to the book Haunted Ohio II, it's said by the locals that you can still see her dressed in white, looking for her bridegroom on the bridge over Beaver Creek. She waits there every year on August 12th, a hideous figure in tattered white satin and lace, and if she touches you, she will become young and beautiful again, but you will die. Number 2. Malabar Farm. Malabar Farm was built in 1939 by Pulitzer Prize winning author Louis Broomfield, and it was his home until his death in 1956. But before it was built, another family lived there in the 19th century. Celie Rose, who lived there, was said to be half child and half woman, according to an 1896 newspaper article. Now, she was infatuated with a boy named Guy Barry who lived in a neighboring farmhouse. They saw each other every day, but her parents told her to stay away from him. Now she didn't like that and got angry at them, so she mixed rat poison in their porridge. Her father and brother died, but her mother survived. She was found not guilty by reason of insanity and went to live with her mother. Celie then poisoned her again, and this time it worked. At age 23, Celie stood trial, truly alone, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a state hospital. She lived out the rest of her life at an insane asylum, and since then the house has been haunted. One visitor saw a woman dressed like Celie Rose outside the house. People have seen lights flicker, felt a phantom cat, disembodied voices are heard, and there's an overall eerie feeling on the property. And coming in at number 1 is the Franklin Castle. The Franklin Castle is arguably the most haunted house in Ohio due to the Tideman's family's tragic past. Hans Tideman, a German immigrant and co-founder of Union Banking and Savings Co., built the home in 1881. His first wife, Louisa, died inside Franklin Castle in the 1890s, and he would eventually bury 3 more of his children and his mother. Since then, the location has been the site of mysterious hauntings. A family with 6 children called the Romanos had moved into the house, and on the day they moved in, 2 of their children said they'd encouraged a crying girl while on the 3rd floor. Now, they kept having a bunch of paranormal experiences, and a priest advised the Romanos to move out, and in 1974 they did. But the hauntings didn't stop when the Romanos left. From there, the house was sold again and again and again. Each new occupant reported strange occurrences like passing through odd vapors, hearing a child crying, or seeing a woman in black standing in the window.
And we're gonna kick off the list with the legend of the Hookman. Now, supposedly on Pond Run Road in the village of New Richmond, there once lived a doctor and his wife. They had a son who was mentally disturbed, and these two were ashamed of him and opted to keep him out of the public eye. This meant chaining him up in the basement whenever people were over, or when they just didn't want him in their presence. One night, there was a terrible storm. A bolt of lightning hit their house and a fire started. When authorities arrived on the scene, they found the parents burnt to death, which was the perfect outcome for despicable people like that. But the boy, who had been chained up in the basement at the time, was nowhere to be found, aside from his hand, still chained up to the wall in the basement. So where did he go? Well, legends started to spread that over the years he grew up stalking through the woods, stealing from homes nearby, brandishing a hook for a hand, and brutalizing innocent people, especially young couples. The urban legend of the Hookman is one you see all over the place. This is just Ohio's specific version of the tale. If you're liking our channel so far, by the way, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? You got nothing to lose. It's free. We got awesome videos coming at you on the daily. Alright, next on the list we have Munchkin Land. This urban legend of Munchkin Land, also known as Tiny Town in Cincinnati, Ohio, centers around a peculiar area near Rumpke Landfill. Here, a cluster of small houses and buildings allegedly housed a community of little people. According to local lore, these tiny inhabitants were notorious for hurling rocks at passing cars, attempting to deter any intruders. Numerous tales circulated about unsuspecting individuals who stopped their cars in the vicinity, only to find themselves confronted by enraged little folk armed with rocks and ready to defend their territory. As to where these little people are said to have come from, the legend goes that they were retired circus performers. Now, there actually was a collection of small structures in this area. They've recently been torn down, I believe. But as to why they were there are lots of different stories, including, of course, that they were built by the little retired circus performers. A more likely explanation, though, is that they had been built by a farmer on the land who had decided he wanted to start running hay rides, and that he, built the houses on the property. But I think it's still a bit murky as to how they got there. Number 8, the Peninsula Python. So this incident involved the discovery of a large python in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Peninsula, Ohio in the summer of 1944. The question obviously was, how did this python, native to tropical regions, end up in a park in Ohio? For a while, authorities didn't even think the reports were real, or at least they didn't think people were really seeing what they thought they were seeing. A massive snake stalking the area became something of an urban legend at the time, but turns out that there indeed was a python, and as to how it got there, some believed that it had been a pet released by its owner, others speculated it had escaped from a traveling circus or a private exotic animal collection. It's still a bit of a mystery to this day as to how it really got there. The python was never even found. It likely died during the winter, but some say it's still stalking its way out there. At number 7, we have Gore Orphanage. Light of Hope Orphanage was established in 1902. It was run by a religious zealot. One day the building caught fire, and the young ones inside all perished in the flames, the cries for help being unheard. The question was, how did the fire start? Well, some say it was an accident, maybe one of the orphans dropped a lamp, but then there's the legend of Old Man Gore, the cruel, sadistic man who ran the facility. In reality, the man's name was Johann Sprunger. He ran the orphanage with his wife, Katerina. It was actually a former orphanage they ran that caught on fire. It was true that they were cruel, though. Orphans attempted escaping from the institution on a number of occasions. There was also a fire in an elementary school in the nearby town of Collinwood, where 176 young people died. So most likely these two real-life incidents were combined and kind of formed this urban legend that is Gore Orphanage. Next on the list, we have the disappearance of Brian Schaefer. In 2006, Brian Schaefer, a medical student at Ohio State University, completely vanished. On the night of March 31st, Schaefer went out with friends to the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar near the campus in Columbus. Surveillance footage captured him entering the bar, but never showed him actually leaving. When his friends realized he was missing, they figured he'd gone home, but he hadn't. And surveillance footage from the bar showed footage of Brian speaking with two women outside the bar just before 2 a.m. His friends had already left at this point. Then he went back inside, and that was it. No trace of him after that. And here's the thing, the bar only had one entrance, monitored by surveillance cameras, which didn't record Brian leaving. On top of that, there were no signs of foul play in his apartment. Over the years, there's been lots of speculation as to what happened here, but one theory is that he voluntarily disappeared and is alive, hopefully anyway, living with a new identity. At our number 5 spot, we have Amy. On Lick Road, just outside of Cincinnati, a terrible incident is said to have taken place. A woman named Amy lost her life at the hands of someone, but the perpetrator was never found. The prevailing theory is that her boyfriend did it, though. As the years passed, tales of Amy's ghost haunting Lick Road began to spread, making the ghost of Amy one of the most prominent urban legends in Ohio. Supposedly, there are a couple ways to experience the ghost of Amy. One legend goes that if you flick your headlights onto the sign as you're turning on to Lick Road at night, you can see the name Amy briefly flash on the sign. Another goes that if you park your car at the cul-de-sac facing the woods, then flash your headlights 3 times, your windows will start to fog up with the word help being written in the condensation. Some nightly visitors have claimed to see the ghostly figure of Amy standing at the edge of the forest. Others claim to hear disembodied footsteps behind them as they make their way across the bridge. Next up, we have Satan's Hollow. In Cincinnati, there is a famous drainage tunnel, a tunnel with a very dark history. Strange and ominous things are said to have happened there. Satanic rituals and disappearances supposedly plague the tunnel, and one story goes that during one of these rituals, a portal to the underworld was accidentally opened. This has led to a number of locals believing this series of interconnected tunnels are actually a portal to hell itself now. People claim to hear strange noises coming from its depths and have even witnessed a shadowy figure known as the Shadow Man, a demonic entity who stalks the tunnel at night. The Werewolf of Defiance. So in the summer of 1972, the small town of Defiance, Ohio was rocked by a series of bizarre and terrifying encounters with what locals would describe as the Werewolf of Defiance. First reported sighting occurred when two railroad workers, Ted Davis and Tom Jones, were laboring on the Norfolk and Western Railway. Ted Davis, busy with his work, suddenly looked up to witness something completely unexplainable. A large wolf-like creature clutching a wooden board in its paws. The creature then just whacked Ted on the shoulder with the board before vanishing into the nearby bushes. I like the imagery of that. Just a werewolf come walking out. Bam! All right, goodbye. Anyway, 5 days later, Ted and Tom returned to work, hoping that the strange encounter was just a one-time event. But unfortunately, they spotted this pesky werewolf again. Luckily, it was much further away this time, and they just booked it out of there. They reported the incident to the local police, and before long, this wave of similar reports flooded in from various parts of Defiance. More and more residents claimed to have encountered a wolf-man-like creature. People were scared to go outside. Like, nobody wants to be gored by a massive-sized wolf person. The sightings, did trail off, but the Wolfman of Defiance has remained a legend of Ohio ever since. And at second place, we have the Crosswick monster. This incident took place in 1982 and has become a prominent tale in Ohio's cryptid folklore. According to this story, two young boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, encountered a terrifying creature in a field. They heard peculiar noises coming from the tall grass, and before they could react, a massive four-legged lizard-like beast emerged. The creature swiftly approached them, grabbing 13-year-old Ed in its jaws and began dragging him towards a hollowed-out tree. Fortunately, though, the boys' screams caught the attention of three nearby men who rushed in to help. They managed to rescue Ed, but he sustained some pretty severe injuries. In response to this initial attack, a group of 60 men armed themselves with axes and clubs, and I'm imagining torches, and they formed a posse to hunt down this creature. They managed to catch up with it, and at one point it stood up on its hind legs. The chase led them to a hill of rocks where the creature vanished into a hole, never to be seen again. The story was written up in the local paper at the time, and it's since grown to be a staple of Ohio's folklore. Just what the hell was the thing that they saw that day? And finally, at a number one spot, we have the Circleville Rider. The Circleville letters case, which began in 1976 in Circleville, Ohio. Is it Circleville or Circleville? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, it's still one of the most perplexing unsolved mysteries in the state. It all began with these anonymous, threatening letters sent to numerous residents. The letters contain detailed, personal information about the recipients' lives, leading to this fear and paranoia throughout the community. The mysterious writer knew intimate details about the victims' private lives and warned them to cease certain behaviors. One of the primary recipients, Mary Gillespie, was particularly targeted. The sender claimed she had been having an affair, which Mary insisted was not true, and the situation escalated when Mary's husband, Ron Gillespie, received a letter warning him that he would be unalived. The case took a tragic turn when Ron Gillespie was found dead in his crashed car. His death was ruled an accident, but many suspected foul play. The letters persisted even after Ron's death, leaving the town baffled about the identity of the sender. Several theories emerged, including suspicions about a local school superintendent and Mary's brother-in-law, but no conclusive evidence was ever found, leaving the case unsolved. This incident has inspired numerous legends and conspiracy theories. Stories have spread about the letters having been written by some sort of vengeful ghost or spirit haunting the town, even. And we're starting off this list today with the Werewolf of Defiance. It's the summer of 1972. Two railroad workers were hard at work on the Norfolk and Western Railway when all of a sudden, one of them, Ted Davis, looked up to see a large wolf-like creature with a wooden board grasped between its paws, which it then whacked the man in the shoulder with before turning off into the bushes to run away like a coward. 5 days later, Ted and his coworker Tom Jones returned to the railway for another day's work, hoping they wouldn't be seeing the big furry monster again. Only they did. Only this time it was a bit of a safe distance away. Not that I'd ever feel a safe distance away from a werewolf, but that's just me. And then they reported the sightings to the police. Right around this time, more and more Wolfman sightings began piling in, and locals began to panic about the potential of being mauled by a 6-foot-tall werewolf. Imagine actually feeling that was a possibility. Like you're heading out of the grocery store and you're like, damn, really hope I don't run into a lycanthrope today. That's their life, apparently, in Ohio. Up next, we have the Loveland Frog. This mysterious creature has been reported to have been sighted in Loveland, Ohio. The amphibious creature is said to resemble a bipedal frog, standing upright on its hind legs, measuring up to 4 feet tall. Not that big, but pretty big for a frog, though. Got leathery skin, webbed fingers and toes. You all know how frogs look. And it's also got those iconic glowing large eyes. The first reported sighting of the Loveland Frog was in 1955, when a man claimed to have seen 3 of them on the side of the road holding some kind of strange wand-like device. Again, only in Ohio would you spot 3 large frogs practicing magic under a bridge. I really gotta visit Ohio sometimes. It just seems like such a fantastical place. Again, Narnia got nothing on Ohio. Anyway, since that initial 1955 sighting, there have been several other ones, including one by a police officer in 1972 who reported seeing a creature fitting the description of the Loveland Frog scuttling across the road and then hopping over the guardrail into the Little Miami River. Another officer even claimed to have shot at the creature, but it escaped. Some people believe the Loveland Frog is an escaped exotic pet or mutated frog, while others speculate that it is a supernatural type of creature. At number 8 on the list, we have melon heads. The melon heads are a group of cryptids that have been reported to have been sighted in various locations in Ohio, but are primarily found in the Cleveland suburb of Kirtland. These creatures are said to be small in stature with large, bulbous heads and distorted facial features. According to legend, they were the result of an experiment gone wrong in which scientists conducted unethical experiments on orphans, resulting in the creation of these strange bobble-headed beings. Some variations of the story also claim that the melon heads are the descendants of a family who suffered from a rare genetic disorder, maybe, that caused their heads to grow abnormally large. Some even say they could be of extraterrestrial origin, which whatever they are, though, I want to see one. I'm telling you, I'm coming to Ohio to go on a full cryptid scavenger hunt, and I'd better see me a weird deformed melon head. At number 7, it's Bessie. The Bessie Lake Monster, or the Lake Eerie Monster. It's a legendary creature that is said to inhabit Lake Eerie. The creature is described as a big, similar in appearance to Loch Ness Monster, kinda long-necked, humpback, as well as a serpentine, kind of dinosaur-like body. The first reported sighting of Bessie dates back to 1973, when a duck hunter saw a large serpentine-like creature thrashing in the lake and startled by his gunshots. And since then, numerous sightings have been reported over the years. Some eyewitnesses claim to have seen the creature swimming close to their boats or even on the shore, while others have reported hearing strange, eerie sounds coming from the water. Despite many attempts to capture or study the creature, there is no concrete evidence of its existence. However, the legend of Bessie persists, and many people believe that there is something mysterious lurking beneath the surface of Lake Eerie. When it comes to creatures that reside in the water, I gotta say, seems plausible. We don't spend a lot of time underwater, Lots could be lurking in those murky depths. You never know. Number 6, Mothman of Gallia County. Most of us have probably heard of the infamous Mothman. Large, winged, glowing red eyes. It was first reported in West Virginia in 1966, but one of the most famous sightings of this large flying insect was over the Silver Bridge that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia to the village of Gallipolis, Ohio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but I think it's Gallipolis. This sighting happened just a year after the first reported Mothman sighting, and right around the time when the creature was spotted on the Silver Bridge, it collapsed. And some still believe that this mysterious cryptid was the one responsible. There have also been reported Mothman sightings before other big disasters, which has led some to speculate as to whether Mothman is a bad omen or if it is simply appears as kind of like a warning of impending doom, bad or good. Orange eyes. Now, this is a Sasquatch type creature that could very well be the same type of creature as a couple others we'll be discussing on the list. There are many Sasquatch variations seen throughout Ohio, but this one is famous for, as you could probably imagine, it's got these glowing orange eyes. There have been reports of strange creatures with orange eyes lurking in Ohio, said to reside in the Riverside Cemetery before moving to the woods by Mill Lake. Witnesses described the creature as resembling a large bipedal humanoid with a muscular build and a hunched posture. Its eyes, once again, seem to emit an otherworldly glow. The creature is reportedly very fast and agile and has been known to vanish into thin air when pursued. Some locals believe that Orange Eyes is a Bigfoot type creature, but there are also those theories that maybe a kind of supernatural being or extraterrestrial entity as well. At number 4, we have Dogman. Most Dogman reports come out of Michigan, but there have been sightings in Ohio as well. According to witnesses, the Dogman is a bipedal, wolf-like creature that stands between 6 and 7 feet tall with a muscular build and a snarling dog-like face. The first reported sightings of the Dogman in Ohio occurred in the late 1980s. Since then, there have been numerous other sightings reported in the state. Witnesses have reported seeing the creature hunting in the woods, stalking prey, and even running across highways at high speeds. Some skeptics believe that the sightings, of course, may be misidentifications of known animals like bears or wolves, while others believe that the Dogman is a real undiscovered species that is yet to be officially documented by science. Number 3, the Crosswick monster. Now, there's only one report of this cryptid, but it's quite the entertaining tale. It's like something out of a classic 1950s monster movie or something like that. And it's a pretty famous piece of Ohio cryptid folklore. The story goes that in 1882, two boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, began hearing strange sounds coming from the tall grass of a bush behind them. They were fishing, and then before they had time to think, a large four-legged lizard creature popped out from the bushes and began making its way toward them. The boys tried to make their escape, but it caught the 13-year-old Ed in its mouth and began dragging him towards a large hollowed-out tree. 3 men had heard the boys screaming and managed to make it to Ed's aid before he was pulled into the tree, although he was badly injured. A group of about 60 men were formed, armed with axes and clubs, and they tried to slay the beast, but the creature managed to escape, actually standing on its hind legs at one point. It's pretty horrifying. The group chased the creature, which retreated into a hole under a large hill of rocks. The creature was never seen again. Described as black and white in color and roughly 12 feet in length. Number 2, the Minerva monster. This has to be one of the most famous Sasquatch sightings in Ohio. In August of 1978, in the village of Minerva, the first sighting of the creature was reported by the Caton family, who'd seen a large hairy creature in the gravel pit outside of their property, looking to be about 300 pounds. Soon became known as the Minerva monster and terrorized the Caton family on more than one occasion. They described seeing it peering through their kitchen window one night, awful, and when police came to investigate, they saw large footprints around their home with a terrible smell lingering in the air. The creature was also reported to have thrown rocks at their home one day, and they even reported seeing 2 large hairy bipeds on a hill by the strip mine near their property. The family has been adamant about what they saw ever since, and their story has remained consistent. It wasn't just the Catons who had run-ins with the large ape-like creature, though. Other locals began reporting seeing a similar creature in and around the Minerva area around the same time. And that's going to bring us to our number 1 spot, the Ohio Grassman. There's a very good chance chance that the Minerva monster and Orange Eyes are the very same creature I'm describing here, as they're all big, all-furry, ape-like creatures. Grassman is pretty much Ohio's nickname for Bigfoot, described as a large, hairy, bipedal creature standing between 7 and 9 feet tall. Grassman is said to have human-like face and a muscular build. Witnesses have reported hearing eerie vocalizations and howls coming from the woods, as well as seeing large footprints that they believe belong to the creature. The first reported sightings of the Ohio Grassman occurred in the late 1800s, but the creature gained widespread attention in the 1970s when multiple sightings were reported in the state. Since then, there have been numerous other sightings reported in the area, while some skeptics dismiss the sightings, of course, as misidentifications of, animals or even hoaxes. Others believe that the Grassman is real and he's an undiscovered species. So I don't know, what do you think? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And we're starting it off today with puckwudgies. The puckwudgie is a creature from Native American folklore that is said to inhabit the forests of the northeastern United States. According to legend, puckwudgies are mischievous tricksters who can cause harm to humans if they are angered or offended. There have been a number of reported sightings of the creatures throughout Ohio. According to folklore, puckwudgies are small, humanoid creatures that stand about 2 to 3 feet tall. They are said to have gray skin, large ears, and a large nose. Some legends also describe them as having quills or spines on their backs. They're believed to be skilled hunters and are said to use their magical powers to disappear and reappear at will. They're also said to have the ability to shapeshift into animals or objects. In some Native American traditions, puckwudgies are viewed as protectors of the forest and are said to have the power to ward off evil spirits. However, in other legends, puckwudgies are seen as mischievous troublemakers who enjoy playing pranks on humans. So if you do happen to see one, prepare to be clowned. Next on the list, we have the cedar bog monster. Now, this is one of those cryptids that could very well be a Sasquatch, or of course, a Grassman as it's known locally in Ohio. It's more of a name given to the specific place this creature was seen though. When Cedar Bog opened as a nature preserve in 1942, people immediately began flocking to the area to witness the various species of birds, the fish and plants, and just soak in the nature. But what they didn't expect or want to see was a large, hairy humanoid creature. But many did report seeing the big ape-like creature strolling along Woodburn Road, which runs right beside the bog. They reported that whatever the thing was too large to be a man. I'm also sure the fur and gorilla-like face kinda gave that away too, possibly. There was also an incident where 3 teenagers went missing in the park while on a camping trip. Apparently, there were reports of loud screams coming from Cedar Bog. At number 8, we have the Charles Mills Lake Monster. Now, there's only one reported encounter with this creature, but it's a pretty eerie story. On the night of March 28th, 1959, 1959 is going to come up a lot on this list, by the way. I don't know what it was about that year, but there was some stuff going on in Ohio. Anyway, 3 teenage boys had been hanging out around the Charles Mill Reservoir when they suddenly saw something forming out of the dark water before them. It was a 7-foot-tall humanoid that began moving towards them. It was described as having no arms, bright glowing green eyes, and webbed feet. The teens obviously booked it out of there and reported what they saw to authorities, who made their way to the area, where they came across footprints, if you could even describe whatever made the tracks as feet. They were large indents that appeared as if they were made by webbed feet. Who knows what this thing was? Even if it was real or just a hoax, there was indeed a large fishy monster skulking around the lake. I'm guessing it must have smelt like a sewer. Number 7, alien big cats. Alien big cats are a very real thing. These are big cats like panthers or leopards found outside of their natural environments. The alien part doesn't mean that these cats are from outer space, but then again, who knows how they got there, right? In 2011, there were several sightings of supposed alien big cats in and around Dayton, Ohio. A private zoo owner by the name of Terry Thompson had released upwards of 50 animals into the wild before, unfortunately, unfortunately taking his own life in October of 2011, which resulted in, of course, several reports of large cats spotted throughout the area. 48 of them were either put under by police or sent off to Columbus Zoo. There had been reports of alien big cat sightings before these animals were known to be released, though, which is strange. Multiple sightings of black panthers dating back to April of 2011, and police would continue investigating sightings until around April of 2012. Phantom kangaroos. Alright, so we have big cats being reported in Ohio, so now we're moving on to kangaroos. Ohio is just full of dangerous wildlife, apparently. The phantom kangaroo is a cryptid that is said to resemble a kangaroo or wallaby and is believed to inhabit various parts of the world, including the United States. Basically, again, these are kangaroos showing up in places they shouldn't be, like Ohio. Except the stranger part is that these phantom kangaroos have been spotted where no escaped kangaroos have been reported. The creature is known for its elusive nature, as well as its ability to seemingly disappear without a trace and leave no evidence behind, almost like a ghost. A phantom kangaroo, if you will. Some experts believe that these sightings may be the result of misidentifications, of course, of other animals like large domestic dogs or coyotes, but I don't know, maybe there's some kangies running around Ohio. Number 5, devil monkeys. So yeah, it seems like there are all kinds of hairy apes and monkeys in Ohio as well. Who would have guessed? You got Grassman, who may or may not be Bigfoot, the hairy orange-eyed creature we talked about in part 1, and now this baboon-looking beast. The devil monkey is a cryptid that is believed to inhabit the forests and rural areas of North America, described as a large, aggressive primate-like creature with gray or black fur and red eyes. The devil monkey is known for its terrifying appearance and alleged attacks on humans and domestic animals. There have been numerous reports of sightings of the creature in Ohio and other parts of the US. Witnesses have described encountering a large bipedal creature that stands on 2 legs and resembles a monkey or baboon with a fierce expression and a tendency to attack without provocation. There are many folks that are convinced that the devil monkey is a real creature, and sightings continue to be reported until this day. Some cryptozoologists speculate that the devil monkey may be a new species of primate that is yet to be officially recognized, while others believe it could be a surviving member of a prehistoric primate species that was previously thought to be extinct. The Trumbull County UFO incident. Next up, we have a well-documented UFO sighting. There have been multiple UFO sightings in the state of Ohio, dating back a long ways, but this one is from 1994. I don't see why aliens wouldn't want to observe Ohio. Seems like there's a lot going on, as you could probably tell from these lists. Maybe they were hovering around, placing bets on what creature they'd spot first. Lots to choose from. There were tons of witnesses to this odd event on December 14th, 1994. Citizens, multiple police officers, dispatchers. It was pretty significant. Multiple residents had reported seeing low flying lights in the sky. The first police officer on the scene, Sergeant Toby Malero, had a pretty odd incident. As he was moving closer to the odd lights in the sky, talking with the dispatcher the entire time, his radio suddenly stopped working and his vehicle just shut off before he was engulfed in a bright light from above. He exited his vehicle, not quite knowing how to go about this odd occurrence, and reported seeing a giant circular shaped object hovering in the sky, which apparently made no sound. Once the object flew away, his car and radio, bam, started working again. 14 other law enforcement officers also saw these mysterious UFOs that night, with one even climbing up on a radar tower for a better view, and then claimed to have seen 3 circular flying objects that changed color in unison. Number 3, Helltown. So while this one is a place and not actually a cryptid per se, it is reported to be an incredibly strange and dangerous place where all sorts of spooky happenings occur. Helltown has been left behind, now an abandoned town where nothing but empty homes, cathedrals, and unused bridges still stand. Though there are some who are said to still reside there, such as ghosts, mutant animals, and cultists. The residents of the town formerly known as Boston, Ohio, had been forced to leave their homes in 1974 when President Gerald Ford signed a bill that gave the federal government's National Park Service jurisdiction to expropriate land for establishment of natural parks. The NPS began buying up properties, and eventually it was a ghost town. In the mid-80s, there were several chemical spills in Helltown that some believed resulted in the mutated animals spotted in the area. And apparently there's also a haunted school bus and stuff like that. Interesting place to go, I'd imagine. And at number 2, we have Octoman. On a cold Cincinnati night in January of 1959, police began receiving several reports of a strange octopus-like creature. It started with a man who called police in a panic, saying that he saw something come out of the river, calling it completely indescribable. This report was followed by one from a truck driver just soon after, claiming to have seen a strange creature while driving into Cincinnati. More and more reports began coming in, but it was hard for anyone to describe exactly what they were seeing. What police did note, however, was that the people calling about these encounters sounded pretty shaken up. Even though the police kind of didn't believe it, they were joking a little bit, that was one thing they did know. These people sounded like they did see something. The more reports that came in as well, the closer they would get to form a description of the creature. A very large creature with grayish skin, tentacles, and a lopsided chest. Sounds like a pretty attractive creature there. One person was stated as saying, "It was large, not a dog or a cat. It leaped in front of my car and on 2 legs and it was taller than the auto. When I looked back in my mirror, it was moving along the bridge rail. It was 3 or 4 times the size of a man and much bulkier. I have an eye in mind for dimensions, and I know it was huge." And coming in at number 1 is the Peninsula python. Now, this is a really interesting one because it really did exist. Sure, it's not really a cryptid per se, but this was an incident that actually took place, and it's pretty wild stuff. The summer of 1944, people in Summit County, Ohio began spotting a massive-sized python in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It was reported being around 15 feet in length and incredibly thick. It was a python, definitely a real animal. It was just in the wrong part of the world, that's all. It's still kind of a mystery as to how it got there, but it's rumored that it was being transported through the area, possibly for a circus or something, but managed to escape. Residents were understandably pretty scared that summer as the giant snake roamed through farms, leaving giant tire-sized indents in its wake. It even attacked livestock. The python was also never found, just disappeared eventually. Most likely died curled up somewhere after succumbing to the Ohio winter though. We're going to start off the list with a recent UFO sighting in Middletown. So in June of 2023, a number of residents reported seeing strange lights in the sky over town. The lights were in a circular formation, rotating. A man named Caden Little managed to capture the weird lights on video. We see them hovering in place, rotating in a counterclockwise direction before flying off at such an amazing speed that if you blink, it just looks like they vanish completely. President of the Cincinnati Astronomical Society, Brian Simpson, looked at the footage, saying that the lights definitely weren't from a drone based on the speed at which they flew out of sight. I think this is a pretty cool piece of footage, but what do you guys think? Genuine? Hoax? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. And while you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button as well. Here's a creepy piece of footage from TikTok. A couple was hiking at night in Ohio when they pulled out their camera to film this pair of eyes peeking out at them from the tree line. At first, they thought it was a deer, but at one point they realize it really doesn't seem to be a deer. Something about the way the eyes are moving and the fact that deers rarely decide to follow people. I really want nothing to do with human beings. So it becomes pretty clear that there's something else tailing them. Now, we never get to see the creature in full. It lurks in the shadows the entire time, but some commenters have said it kind of moves like a big cat. Others have commented it could be the Ohio grassman or dogman. Whether this was a cryptid or a predatory animal, either would be terrifying. Eventually, the couple wisely decides to hurry out of there. The small village of Sabina once had something of a mascot, a very macabre mascot. It was a mummy. So in 1929, an African-American man in his mid to late 40s was found dead on a road near Sabina. No ID, just $1.40 in cash and a scrap of paper with an address that turned out to be a vacant lot in Cincinnati. The authorities had no idea who this guy was, so they went with the name Eugene. Eugene the Mummy was taken to Sabina's Littleton funeral home and embalmed. They put him in a brick shed by a bus stop, thinking maybe someone would recognize him during the 30-day viewing period. But no luck. Folks in Sabina got kind of attached to their new resident, though. They cleaned him up, they changed his clothes. Things got really weird, though, when local kids started playing with him and moving him around, even swiping his gold teeth. Teenagers would even take the poor guy out on joyrides. The mummy ended up being taken to Ohio State University and was placed on a bench outside the school to scare students. The Littleton funeral home got wind of this, and Eugene was sent back to Sabina, and at this point it was clear the guy needed to be buried. Eugene got a plot in the local cemetery, complete with a stone that says he was found dead in 1929, buried 1964. His identity is still a complete mystery. Next up, we have the case of the Peninsula Python. I think this is one of my favorite stories to come out of Ohio. It's not often that a massive-sized wild python ends up roaming through a middle American state, but in one magical summer in Ohio, that's exactly what happened. In the summer of 1944, something strange happened in Summit County, Ohio, near the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. People started reporting sightings of a massive python about 15 feet long and incredibly thick. Now, at first, authorities didn't take these reports seriously, thinking it might be a hoax or some kind of wild exaggeration. As it turned out, though, what could have gone down as just another one of Ohio's many urban legends turned out to actually be very real. The residents were not making it up. Somehow a large python was let loose. No one could explain how the snake ended up in Ohio, but there it was. During that summer, the residents were terrified as the enormous snake roamed through farms, leaving behind indentations the size of giant tires. To make matters worse, the python even attacked livestock. I mean, of course it did, right? Authorities spent the whole summer hunting this thing down, but it was never found. It just disappeared eventually. Most likely it died from exposure during the harsh Ohio winter. Next up is the Crosswick monster case. This was a very well-documented case at the time, and is one of the strangest stories ever to come out of the state of Ohio. Just saying a lot. So in 1882, two boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, had a really terrifying encounter with a strange creature in a field. They heard strange noises from tall grass, and before they could react, they said they saw this large lizard-like beast with 4 legs come out of them. The creature approached the two, grabbed Ed in its jaws, and started dragging him towards a hollowed-out tree. Ed's screams ended up catching the attention of nearby men who rushed over to help. They managed to rescue Ed, but he was injured. After the incident, 60 men armed themselves with axes and clubs, and they formed a posse to hunt down this thing. They caught up with it, and the creature then stood on its hind legs. The chase led them to a hill of rocks where the creature escaped into a hole, never to be seen again. The local newspaper reported the story at the time, and it's since become a staple of Ohio's folklore. And I could see why. I mean, a lot of folks saw this thing that day. The exact nature of the creature, still a total mystery. So yeah, I don't know. I just love that story. Anytime there's multiple people who see something, that just it makes it far more interesting for me. Next is another UFO case. This is the Trumbull County incident. This was a series of events where numerous residents reported seeing these unusual lights in the sky. Even police officers reported seeing things. Multiple residents reported sightings of odd lights in the night sky, describing them as bright and unusual aerial activities. Officer Toby Maloro was on duty that night. He was dispatched to investigate reported lights, and he was driving closer and closer to the source of these lights, keeping contact with the dispatcher, describing what he saw in real time. And at one point, radio communication was suddenly cut off, and his vehicle stopped. Maloro then became engulfed in a bright light from above. He got out of his vehicle for some reason to get a better view and reported seeing this massive circular object hovering in the sky. One of the strangest parts about his description of these events is that even though this thing was massive, it was almost completely silent. After a period of time, the object began to move away, and just as the craft moved off, his car and radio started working again. It's a pretty fascinating case, not just because of the detailed account made by Officer Malero, but all the corroborating reports from other residents as well. Now, a corroborated UFO case is one thing, but mass amounts of people frantically phoning into the police claiming to witness a large mutated octopus man, that is a whole other story. Very wild case right here. So the Octoman case, this unfolded on the 29th of January, 1959 in Cincinnati. It was a series of reports to the local cops about a bizarre octopus-like creature. The first report came from a man who urgently contacted police. He had a hard time describing what he was seeing because no one's ever seen a mutated octopus man before. And then a truck driver phoned up saying he'd encountered an unusual creature while driving into Cincinnati. Reports then just kept flooding in. The common thread with these calls is that people apparently sounded genuinely distressed. The creature was described as very large and had grayish skin, tentacle-like appendages, and a lopsided chest. Not sure exactly what that means, but I don't know, just maybe kind of like hunchback kind of. One witness provided a more detailed account stating it was large. Not a dog or a cat, it leaped in front of my car on two legs and was taller than the auto. When I looked back in my mirror, it was moving along the bridge rail. It was 3 or 4 times the size of a man and much bulkier. I have an eye and mind for dimensions, and I know it was huge. If I ever had the opportunity to go back in time, like forget going to Woodstock or anything like that, I'd just be like, take me to Cincinnati, Ohio, January 29th, 1959. I just want to know what everyone saw that night. Like, was it just a guy with a horrible deformity? Was there just something weird in the air that night? Or was there a freaking octopus creature roaming around that bridge? I desperately want to know. The Cedar Bog Monster. So the Cedar Bog Monster is just one of Ohio's many variations of Bigfoot. Back in the 50s, people started spreading stories about a creature hanging out in the Cedar Bog Nature Preserve. It was described as a large, hairy figure standing around 7 feet tall, with eyes that shined in the dark, and a not-so-pleasant odor. One of the most famous sightings was from a couple who had parked near the bog. They spotted the huge, hairy creature strolling along Woodburn Road, which runs right beside the bog. They hightailed it out of there, of course, and reported the incident to the police. And there would be more and more accounts being reported. People started saying they were hearing strange noises in the woods, like grunts and howls. Some would find massive-sized footprints. Local news even featured the Cedar Bog Monster in a headline. Now, what I wonder is, if this thing really did exist, is it a different creature than the Grassman and Orange Eyes and like all these other big hairy creatures roaming around Ohio? Or are these folks seeing the same creature or species of creature? These are the important questions you have to ask yourself. Another one of Ohio's strangest cases is the Werewolf of Defiance sightings. So in the summer of 1972, on the Norfolk and Western Railway in Defiance, 2 railroad workers, Ted Davis and Tom Jones, experienced a bizarre and unsettling event that would later be dubbed the Werewolf of Defiance case. It all began with Ted Davis, who, while working away on the railroad, saw something otherworldly. He reported seeing a large, wolf-like creature. The creature actually held a wooden board in its paws, and without warning, it swung the board, striking Ted squarely on the shoulder. The creature then hastily retreated into the bushes like a coward. 5 days later, Ted and his coworker, Tom Jones, returned to the railway for another day of work. For some reason, they didn't quit after that first encounter. Sure enough, the creature shows up again, and this time it was actually a safe distance away from the two, and Ted and Tom then reported their encounters to the local police. Little did they know that their report was just the beginning of a wave of Wolfman sightings in the area. Other reports started flooding in, each detailing sightings of this menacing wolf monster, but reports started to trickle out by the end of that summer. So, did people hear about that first report and just want attention? Was the whole thing a big hoax? Once again, I'd really love to go back in time and just hide by that railway. to watch the whole thing play out. Finally, we have the case of the Minerva monster. Back in 1978, folks in Minerva started talking about a hairy creature running around in the woods. A big, hairy, unknown beast. People claimed it was about 7 feet tall, had reddish-brown hair, and looked like a giant ape. Yes, another giant ape in Ohio. There are many. It all started when the Quaint family saw this monster near a gravel pit outside their house, and they saw it on more than one occasion. One night they saw it peering at them through their window. It would also hurl rocks at their home. A real awful creature. It scared the living daylights out of them. Of course, they even said it smelled bad, like a mix of skunk and a wet dog. Not exactly a pleasant combo. Authorities were contacted and they came to investigate, but all that was left behind were large footprints around the family's property, leading back into the woods. A number of other residents also made reports about a similar creature around the same time, including the Quaint's neighbor. It's still a complete mystery, though, as to what this thing was.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next! It's actually part 1 to this series, and we'll get into even more creepy small towns in Ohio that are hiding pure evil. Click the video now to find out more.